Welcome to another episode of Mindful Drawing. This week, we'll reach out into the space around us, into that inspiration that has haunted and inspired us as humans since our beginnings, looking upwards into the stars. And if, like me, you live in a dense urban region where often the lights from the city mask out the darkness of the sky, making only the brightest moments perceptible, every once in a while, it's nice to get a break and go out further away from those artificial lights and allow that infinite dome above to reach back into our past, reach back into ourselves, and inspire us to wonder what more is out there. We'll begin today by establishing our own space on the page, filling it with potential constellations, and giving those constellations some degree of radiance and interaction as we track our movements with our awareness and our breathing to release out into the space of the paper any anxiety or nervousness for the day, to find relaxation and an opening up in this act of mindful drawing. Grab your sketchbook, piece of paper, a pad, a pen or pencil, or anything else you'd like to draw with, and let's draw together. Hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving break and maybe a chance to relax a little bit. We're out in a bit of the country in Maryland, and it's kind of nice to see some stars and hang out at night, which was a treat. And thought that might be something we could use to enter into the drawing a little bit, just the variety and constellation that tends to emerge there in the night sky when we aren't so full of light that we can see it. And just as a way to enter the drawing, stretching the fingers and rolling the shoulders a little bit, making sure we're loose and ready to go. And I'll jump right in, but feel free to use multiple pages if you'd like, or just draw into one page in the sketchbook. And to open up that space that fills the page, I'm just going to begin by defining some of my own constellations by picking any spot and making a shape or dense dot of variable sizes and moving around the pen just to kind of pick in place and spend a little time in each spot, letting whatever medium you're choosing, that's a pen, or pencil, or something more soft or more precise, to move around in that location and begin to form some emergence in that space of the page. Some may be very tiny and speckled, others large and irregular. As you have a few forming, you begin to have them perhaps make their own little constellations or trajectories, or just allow them to be a bit random for now as we play in the space of that ink or graphite flowing out onto the paper. Just letting them create small pattern disturbances. And I see here that I've picked a pen that may not last long, but will work well for this. As you might start to see or perceive some constellations here, it could be a good chance to just let the eyes close and let the fingers kind of follow the wobbling circular technique that might be making these dots, to avoid getting too caught up in seeing the constellations we're generally aware of or might be familiar with. Just allow some new stuff to emerge in that space of internal attention with this external register. And from time to time, perhaps opening the eyes to see if we're still on the paper. But just letting the dots form in whatever pattern might come from your movement around the page. And now that we've gotten a few taking place, it's a good time to begin to check in with our breath. Some of the oscillating or quickly orbiting, wobbling circles, a good chance to let out any early morning nervous energy or anticipation or just the starting of something new. And now that being on the page and us having a general movement pattern at play, coming into taking a breath in as we position the pen or pencil and just letting it fall out as you continue to make those variable dots. Breathing into position and just letting the breath ease its way out. No forcing to wherever the lungs feel ready to breathe in again and start that relaxing falling away of the breath. You can keep your eyes open or closed for these breathing moments. Breathing into position and letting it out for the creation of another dot in our constellation. In and out. In these moments of attention between our breath and the position or movement of our hand and the external creation of some figure or shape, bringing us into a space of rhythm and awareness here with our drawing. Perhaps letting the eyes drift over this field of marks and see if there are new emergent patterns or just that infinite variable cloud that we see when we look up. And as we reach perhaps a high degree of density, where the picking and placing, if done with our eyes open, becomes more deliberate or more of a challenge to see where the next one might go, you can begin to move into an expansion of this technique, letting our breath guide, extending the range of some of these dots just by giving them a bit of an orbit, whether that's a smooth circle. Circles can be challenging to draw, and if they bring a discomfort, maybe it becomes a wobbly circular thing just to allow the pen to move. Give some radiance to each one of these potential clusters in this space of the page. Each orbit a chance for a new breath, moving the pen with the speed that the breath naturally falls out from the body, either positioning or drawing on the in-breath. And as the orbits extend into the space, reaching towards one another, either allowing them to glance closely or perhaps overlap. As you breathe around the space defined by each disturbance in the emptiness. Allowing all of your attention to drift around that orbit with the pen or pencil. Each new location and mark can perhaps start to become an influence on its local context. Is the dot a nice, clean circle? Or does it wobble and distort? And does that affect the orbit as our eyes enter into each location, its own potential unique little world, some smooth and dense, others loose, and just wobbling through their space. Small ones might bring with them more rapid movement, and bringing that attention to whether the speed and size of the movement increases with the breath or fits within the space between. Perhaps smaller orbits happen both on the in as well as the out. Letting our attention to that movement of our body and the replenishing of its oxygen and its alignment become part of the forefront as we enter through the visual map that we're creating here in the drawing. And perhaps if you spent some time with the eyes closed, working on your initial constellations, you'll find a few with quite distinct or unique shapes and characteristics. And allow your eye and hand to merge with that space in the page and how that might affect your orbits. Here so far, many of mine being complete as they end and begin in around the same place, but perhaps spirals jump out or even just partial tracks around, missed alignments at the end to allow ourselves a little freedom to explore. As we've been drawing in this technique for a little while, we can bring our attention to the patterns that we may have consciously or unconsciously started to develop, seeing which direction you begin your drawing, clockwise or counterclockwise, and being with that for a little bit to bring it into the forefront of attention as our breath has stabilized in a rhythm and can fall into the background. You have a consistency to those orbits, starting to play in that space of where it begins and where it ends, whether complete or open. Allowing some slight deviation or variation from the pattern to open up our awareness of it, to bring our attention into patterns that we might develop every day in our work, in our interactions, so that we have room within those patterns to adjust them to the situation, to adapt them to what may serve us in our outward interface, and other times to recognize when they are no longer of service, and perhaps to change them up and try moving in another direction, starting and ending in new locations, initiating the action with a sense of play and openness. Here I'm moving from my, for whatever reason, generally clockwise starting rotation to a counterclockwise. And it takes the muscles in the finger a little bit of time to release that memory of the practiced way of moving around the page, of the comfort with the feeling of how the pen or pencil may have been interacting, the texture of the paper becoming new, perhaps even in such a small change as just the direction of orbiting here, introducing some degree of discomfort, perhaps small sensations of frustration as the muscles recalibrate, and to know we can lean back into our breath to slow down the motion and align it with our body's rhythms, taking a breath in to locate ourselves. And as we let the breath fall away and out, to complete an action by being in the space. And with a few rounds of grounding or stabilizing breath, finding some new balance, new places of comfort or agency in the new patterns, and allowing them to guide us for a while. It can be in these patterns that we initiate, that we discover new territories, checking in from time to time by scanning through our body, through our mind, and being mindful of when we might shift or adapt or deploy different aspects of these patterns. Here in the drawing, something like a shift in the orbit's intensity, speed, or shape. Some moments in this constellation map providing an influence to crisper, stronger, more deliberate circles for a while, exercising some of the control and precision we might have or want to have with our movement. Others can shift back to be more loose, more open, more flexible. Both having their place here in the space of the drawing, and in how we might interact with the space around us. And this track of exploration brings to mind, for me, a kind of funny thought in the sense of remembering some of the importance in practicing play. But then if we are practicing play, are we playing or not? And the practice may come more in a reminder to establish some of that space where a more playful nature, one where the output is not the focus, where we are absorbed in the state of being and acting, where hopefully in some way we are having fun and enrichment in that action, whether alone or shared with others, and that we can test things, experiment, let loose some concern of completeness or productivity. And in that experience, still be practicing at our awareness of what we're bringing to a situation, whether that might be in the movement of a pen on the paper as it tracks with our eyes enhance what is already seen and present. Or in the searching for possible ideas and inspiration. For a few minutes to quietly doodle or dream or just draw into the space of our breath and these constellations and orbits that we've established here on our own little map. While you might scan over the space of the drawing, perhaps you have filled the page with the locations and orbits of these potential constellations, or perhaps you have many more to go to fill out the completeness of a thing. Wherever you are, whether you feel driven or engaged to complete every aspect, I encourage and challenge to perhaps let it go and begin again if there's something in the technique that's interesting, or if it's full and dense, choosing any moment as a good moment to stop, come back into your space and yourself, and prepare to have a nice rest of your day. Hopefully, after listening to this, you can initiate some of your own practices and just begin to use the drawing and the connection to the breath, your movement and the body, letting go of the product or the outcome, and just inhabiting a bit of that space of making a mark, drawing a shape, and creating something on that page with your attention and awareness absorbed in that moment as you let the breath feed into yourself and carry away with it any tension or anxiety or nervousness into that space of the drawing, and over time out from you to dissipate into the vastness of the space around us. Thank you for joining, and have a wonderful week. Draw well.